Here we go. We are live. So welcome everyone on YouTube to the final guest artist talk of the year. I believe it's our 10th because I've been numbering them each time. But I am very excited to have Malik Williams here with us today. Malik, we met actually through Rudy Hippolyte, who was also a guest artist this summer, because Malik has done the music for a few of Rudy's films. But beyond the documentaries that he works on, he's a platinum selling composer, producer, an engineer, and an educator. And he has deep inside knowledge about music licensing, how to protect your own property, and also has done work in pretty much any sphere of the music business that you can imagine. So he'll give a little bit of a talk and then we'll have some Q&A. But without further ado, thanks so much, Malik, for being here. And yeah, it's a pleasure to hear a little bit about what you do.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone out there in Zoom land. So my name is Malik Williams. I'm originally from Dorchester, Roxbury growing up. I'm a musician, producer, engineer. I am a publisher. I do work with film, TV, advertising, documentaries, things like that. Rolling back to my early years, I grew up, I was pretty much a guitar player because I was a bass player because I had a guitar with only 4 strings on it, right? So that made me a bass player. But no, so I was in bands during my school years, even my college days, playing in bands. That kind of got me into actually a lot of the guys in the band were multi-instrumentalists, songwriters, things like that. So we ended up all kind of collaborating, working together. That's how musically for myself, I was a vocalist. Actually, I was a vocalist first before any of that. Vocalist, bass player in the band, and then that allowed me to play guitar, things like that on different songs. And then we ended up kind of getting into the songwriting phase and then into production. So working in different studios. And again, it was pretty much all the same players that we were all kind of working with. So that kind of got me more into like the technology and the engineering aspect of things. Back then in playing in the bands, like that's when, not to date myself, but digital technology, we went from the analog instruments into digital technology and MIDI production and things like that. That was already kind of like a really interesting and exciting learning curve, so, but that enabled me to really network with a lot of other producers and songwriters out there, and even guys that were like solely on the technical side, guys that were some of my friends that are still my friends to this day that were like programming sounds for like Roland keyboards and on Korg and a lot of these other big brands that were out there. And I didn't really understand the impact of that back then, like what they were doing. These were guys who just kind of in and out of the studio. But I think over the years, I just kind of absorbed from using sequencers. I was totally terrified of computers. So that was something that was really, really, like that curve with technology, just like I felt like somebody's grandparents. Can I say that? Where it's like, hey, this is this awesome piece of technology, this thing called a cell phone. And like, I don't even want to, bother with it. But through having my friends and my, the guys that I was hanging out with, it was actually pretty cool because, just kind of learning more about that on the technical end. And then as I kind of explored more, working with like local artists, working with signed artists at the time, Bobby Brown, that was here. There was a studio in Dorchester. I used to go to Atlanta back then with MCA Records, and just to kind of rig up the studio gear, interfaces and things like that. So that a lot of songwriters and producers didn't quite, know how to do it just because of technology, and just the way the technology was coming in and the access to even figuring out how that gets done. Because we had our small home studios, we were able to kind of like suffer through and talk to guys at the music stores and really be more hands-on that way. So that enabled me to kind of get into more professional studio environments, as a tech, so a songwriter as well, as a tech. So that was kind of like my intro to production. Then, fast forwarding just a little bit, I ended up leaving and going on tour with Jordan Knight from New Kids on the Block. I don't know if you guys remember that group, but when Jordan Knight had his solo career, I was gone with him on the road as a production manager. And that took me to, it was really pretty exciting, like for like 2 weeks where you get to, tour around the world. And then you show up to countries with a suitcase and like limited clothes or whatever. And my condition with Jordan, like when he asked me to go out, I said, all right, I'll go, but I gotta be able to still bring my gear, like, and still be productive. Like if I had a day off in a hotel somewhere, then I need to be able to write. That never happened. It was absolutely crazy. But I did have like my portable gear, like my laptop and my portable printer. But as a production manager, it was pretty much me kind of overseeing and even sometimes babysitting people. So if we were, in some country, and I remember just being in Argentina, looking out the window at like really awesome, an awesome vacation spot, and I'm stuck in my hotel room because I'm, typing out itineraries and show schedules. But that it gave me that experience. It was definitely really cool. I met a lot of creative people when I was out there on the road. It also kind of defined what I wanted to do. It gave me some direction because I didn't like being away from the creative aspect of what I was doing, even though it was pretty cool to like do that. I kind of like left tour a bit disgruntled because I felt like if I did that longer, if I stayed in that world, it's still another area of business, but I would not have really been able to express myself creatively. So I still had my studio, at my house when I came back, and I ended up just, at this time, just as a songwriter and as a 100% songwriter, writing songs and being able to produce and record them. I started doing music for film and TV, which kind of led me into this whole music licensing phase. So I was doing music for Young and the Restless, soap operas, things that I would never think that I'd be doing. It just seems like so foreign, All My Children. And then fast forwarding like MTV, VH1, Cribs, Pimp My Ride, all these really healthy programs, and then, you have all the other obscure ones, I used to date your mom and, this teen, this and that. It was cool, to an extent, Jersey Shore, which is a, really cool show, or Kardashians, all that. A lot of times if I got a call, it would say, hey, we need a song that sounds like something else, like another artist that's out there. So that to me was pretty exciting. I didn't quite understand it at the time in regards to like why I wanted to do it. All I knew, like I started doing music by, somebody having a poem, like and saying, hey, I want to make this out of a song. So, I could read it and see like if it's fast or slow or happy or sad. And then I could actually create a song through that. And that was like, before the film and TV experience. And then once I got into that, I realized that, we call it like R&D, like rip off and duplicate. Like if they want a song that sounds like another artist that's out there, but they can't afford to pay the licensing fee, then they can actually, pay us as songwriters to do that. And it was definitely a really great experience doing that. So it enabled me to still write. TV for me or film, I could write whatever I want to write. So I don't have to write like what's, considered the latest, greatest song, to compete with somebody else that's writing music. I could just really write music for that application. So as a storyteller myself, on the music side, that to me was satisfying and gratifying, just in order to have that opportunity to do that. And how I felt I could collaborate. I can actually be very expressive. I felt like I was pretty good at it. Started to build my brand for who I am. And that's something that still till this day, I'm still working on film, and whether it be feature films or documentaries. I know we have a list of some links that I sent Peter with that Rudy Hippolyte, that was here presenting. He's one of the local directors that I've done a couple of films with. Actually, Rudy is one of the people that he used to work at Harvard University. And I remember I met Rudy, I don't know, it's been well over 10 years, 15 years maybe. And I knew his brother and we were kind of hanging out. And I didn't know he's a filmmaker. Not until like probably a few years later. And then he was telling me about a documentary he had an idea for. But at the time, also, Harvard University was, they wanted to do like crib style marketing for their dorms and things like that. So I ended up doing music with Rudy for projects like that, were actually pretty cool. And when he had his documentary, and he kind of told me about it, and I was like, yeah, yeah, cool, we'll definitely do it. And then when he was ready, and he ended up giving me, stack of CDs, of scenes, and that documentary was called Push Madison versus Madison. But that was a documentary that we completed, and it got picked up. It was on ESPN, PBS, and it did fairly well. But that was pretty much my road into the music licensing scene. Is there any questions at this point that we could? Maybe not. Okay. So one of the things, like just kind of backing up on the technology side, I'm not sure what the backgrounds are of the folks that are here with us today. But one of the things I'm really big on when it comes to education is outside of just digital audio in the production process, it's also like the tools and what's out there education wise, what's out there for free, things that I've done to, kind of climb my ladder, to find resources, to network. And networking is huge anyways. But I don't know if you guys are, what PROs you're with, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. I don't know if you guys cover that. PROs, which is performing rights organizations. And I guess what I could do, I can probably, Peter, I could, if requested, I can even send you an outline of some of the things that I'm talking about to share with some of your students. So ASCAP is the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, and BMI is Broadcast Music Inc., which is the two big PROs that are out there. So really, in a layman's term, what they do is they actually they monitor and collect royalties and also act somewhat as a union in a way. They're not a union, but they kind of act that way. In other words, if you're assigned as a songwriter with them, which pretty much any songwriter can be, so it's not like getting a record deal or a deal at all. So there's no real requirement outside of yourself, your social security number, and whatever work that you're doing. So as a songwriter, I strongly, highly encourage any songwriter out there to definitely go on their website, ASCAP, ASCAP.com and BMI.com, simply, and just check that out. Any major songwriter, regardless of what genre they're in, regardless of, if they're doing records or film and TV or musicals, like anything you can think of, anyone that you can think of that's actually writing, kind of similar to like somebody writing a book, right? So there's an author, and then you have the songwriter, and I'm sorry, you have the author of a book and a publisher, and the same thing as a songwriter. You have a songwriter, and then you have a publisher, which is it's really separated. If you look at a pie, 100% of a pie is 50% goes to songwriter in regards to royalty, and 50% goes to the publisher. So, and of course, there's splits from there on the songwriting side. So if you have 2 or 3 people writing, then that's how those royalties get split up. When you think about Sony or Universal and different publishers, bigger publishers out there, they're pretty much giving somebody a deal in order to represent them and administer their work. So that's super duper important regardless, because on an educational side, what's really important about that is it puts you into a network of other songwriters. And if you're open to collaborating, which I'm hoping most people would be, that allows you to kind of network with people, to just create other opportunities within yourself. So some other songwriters might have a publishing deal with another major label that they're looking to get songs completed so they can pitch them to records, like you know national records, I should say, that are out there, a major label projects. The same thing with film and TV. It's the same. In order for myself, like I'm a music supervisor, in order for myself to use a piece of music from a songwriter or band, I have to know who wrote that music. So that's like really, really important. And that's how most people get paid. And in film and TV, a lot of times, if it's a song with a lyric on it, they might have an upfront fee. A lot of times they might not have an upfront fee. And so the only way you can get paid from doing that work is to actually be a part of one of these societies, because they monitor where your songs get played, on what networks they get played, in what countries they get played, things like that. So, and those are things that a lot of people don't really think about in regards to being a songwriter. I can say that work that I've done, even in 2000, let's say, or even before that, still gets surveyed now. Soap operas that I did way back then, it could go from, ABC or NBC, which is our major networks here, in Boston, in regards to, where those soaps potentially, or that TV program plays. Then it goes to, potentially and more than likely goes to like a cable network a lot of times. So when you hear about TV shows being syndicated and things like that, that's really, as a songwriter, like the benefit you want. Like you want to write music for a TV show, or any. Now we have YouTube and every media platform that's out there, where all of these platforms generate royalties. And I think a lot of songwriters think about, oh, this is my song, I want to get it out there, I want to I want to get a major record deal, or on Spotify, and have my song being able to be downloaded on iTunes. And the if you have a major song, like a major hit, then maybe you'll make some money. For the general songwriter, artist and band, they're not really going to realize any royalties that's worth much, unless you have a lot of streams that are out there. But film and TV, you can actually still make a living by getting songs placed out there, getting into a network, and at least you can, it's a good, subsidy in regards to income for like the average songwriter that's out there. So you don't have to have like 100 songs that are placed. If you're doing full songs, and if you can get into a network in regards to like working with producers and music supervisors, that's definitely one place where you can earn income. And even once they get outside of the US, which is the other thing a lot of people don't think about, but songs that end up over in the UK somewhere, number one, they end up over there and the dollar's worth more than ours. So you end up making more money. But then when it ends up in different countries across the board, it's just a matter of like going back to the PROs, like how do you collect from that, right? So if your song is playing in, Indonesia somewhere, how would you ever know, right? So then you actually have to kind of have that relationship with an ASCAP or BMI. In some cases, depending on what that song is, what record it potentially was on, getting out there, sometimes you have to have what's called a sub-publisher, which potentially collects. So, a major sub-publisher might be a BMG or something like that folks may have heard of. So that's kind of the overview of the music licensing in regards to like how I got in regards to like tools or other networking opportunities out there. We have our Grammy organization that's in New York. I'm a Grammy member myself. And so that's something, even, again, I share this to even go online and check out their website, because most people think of the Grammys and they think of the TV show, an award show. And really it's a professional development organization, which is the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. So when people, collect their Grammy on stage and they're like, I want to thank the Academy, right? And that's what it is. So it's the Academy. And so they have different workshops and things that they're doing throughout the year. There's chapters across the country in most of the major hubs, like New York. So anyone in Boston is they're pretty much New York chapter members. Then it goes down to Atlanta and Nashville, and then over to LA and things like that. Um, that's one. The Audio Engineer Society, if you guys are audio engineers at the same time, which most of us typically are, we have our chapter here, our Boston chapter that's here. So it's AES or BostonAES.org, I believe is the web link there. That's a huge community of audio engineers that are working on everything across the board, from big records and live production, film and TV. Right now, I'm working with the Mass Film Office, and we're the Mass Production Coalition, trying to figure out how to merge this film. A lot of the films that we see going on, we go everywhere now, and we see people, filming here in Massachusetts. Production companies are all over the place, and so we're trying to figure out ways to kind of merge um, the film and TV opportunities with the audio post opportunities as well. For all of us, it's opportunity to kind of get in and learn and network and everything else. So I find that to be like really huge. And these are things that I've done with my own career. So that I'm even mentioning because um, it's kind of hard. Like it's hard if you don't have resources, if you don't have money, if you don't have ways to get around, you don't have a car, you can get on a train or a bus. We used to get on the bus to New York all the time, or find a couple of people that want to all go at the same time to a particular event. ASCAP BMI, they have all kinds of free events. We're just coming out of COVID now, kinda. So there's probably going to be a lot of opportunities popping up, right? So you can go to the website, check it out. I definitely encourage anyone that's a songwriter to go in there and explore the membership, right? Because that gives you access to a lot of free, um, like access to it for free. And also, what I did with, if I had friends that were BMI members, then we would actually do both. So I'd hook up with my BMI friend, and I'm an ASCAP writer. Um, I'm an ASCAP publisher as well. But when I first got in, I had a buddy who was with BMI, and we would just tag team each other's events. Like we'd literally like, hey, there's something going on in New York, let's go. And we'd both go together, and I'd take him to mine, he'd take me to his. And then we'd stand outside like the Marriott in Times Square, like where they typically had these events, and we'd stand outside and figure out who we can meet, and we tag team our networking that way. So, and the cool thing, which I tell people all the time, is if you're so the Grammy membership has certain requirements, and if you can work up to those requirements, that puts you in a room with other, like basically a network where potential colleagues are all kind of in the same professional level in a way, at least from there's a certain bar. The Audio Engineering Society is a place where you can actually go regardless of who you are. They do a lot of student events, things like that. Grammy has Grammy U, but because we're in Boston, it's a little bit weird in regards to their outreach. But they still have Grammy U, but Grammy U is still kind of like if you're in Berkeley or the conservatory or something like that. Other than that, it's more difficult to kind of participate or be invited. Audio Engineer Society is way more inviting in regards to having a Boston chapter. So all of us are here. So if there's something going on, it's kind of easy to reach out and say, hey, um, what's up with this event? And somebody like me would say, oh, okay, I'll be there. Just come down and ask for me, ask for me when you get there, and I'll hook you up. Because a lot of us, the presidents and chairs of these organizations and the education committees, I'm actually on the very involved with AES's education committee, and as well as with the Grammys, like the Grammy Foundation. They do a lot of education, and they have other cool organizations like Music Cares. But a lot of us that have known each other for years, we kind of have a pact where it's like, hey, anyone that we want to kind of come in and be a part of this, sometimes it's like, hey, don't even worry about membership, just come and maybe we can share, or maybe it's an outdoor cookout somewhere, that kind of thing, which they do it, or studio parties that they do because they want to share. A studio owner might say, hey, use my studio for this event, or Christmas party or something like that. And, people show up and based off of like invitations, and nobody's going to say, what are you doing here? Because we want to invite more um, creative people and more, engineering and brilliant minds to the scene. And for myself, I don't look at somebody in regards to like how old they are or how young they are. Like all of us are just, when I look at someone is like they're potentially like really brilliant, and I want to get to know who they are, and I want to like support what they're doing and everything else, especially younger people as well. Like younger people that come in as songwriters, like you can be as, you can be 5 years old and be like a brilliant songwriter, or a teenager and be a brilliant songwriter. So for myself, I look at that as a creative person, and I just kind of respect everyone across the board, because the more of us hanging out, the more of us that, you know, get to enjoy the party. So, um, go
I
ahead.
just want to jump in, Malik. I think there was a question from Dionisio earlier. I'm not sure if it's still pertinent.
Sure.
Yeah, I kind of look it up online, but I guess still matters. I'm not an American citizen. Yeah, I live in Mexico. So I wonder, because believe it or not, Mexico is very centralized. So anyone living outside of Mexico City basically has very little opportunity to make themselves a career in the arts.
Hmm.
So one of the problems I've been faced most with the most is the protection of my work, and not only in music but also in many other things. Because for everything that I want to like protect or to register or anything, I have to travel to Mexico City, which is relatively far away. It's like going from New York to like perhaps Virginia, no, a little bit more. I don't know. It's a fairly large distance, and it's relatively expensive. And so I was wondering if one who is not an American citizen could register into these uh, song rights protection agencies like the ASCAP or all that. So that was what I was wondering. Now I know that the ASCAP has an office in the UK, so it probably has some leeway for that. But I want to know if you know someone who has had that experience of not being an American citizen or registering in America, just because the protection of rights is going to be more, going to be a little bit safer and more enforced. Well,
It's interesting because I haven't had that personal experience with anyone that I've met. And that's definitely something I will help you research, because I know a few people that I could call to find out more directly. Um, if you're worried about copyright, so I think at least have you explored the Copyright Office, which is copyright.gov at all? Um,
I haven't really. I was talking with a friend who also just is not registered to any like agency, but he's
mhm.
in the United States, and what he does is just like create a proof that he wrote the music, which is just mail it to himself. And so I have been doing that for a while now, but I'm sure there must be like an easier way, right? So I don't know, like registering as an artist here is just not viable. It's like I'm gonna lose if I make any money out of a composition or anything. I'm gonna lose it all just on traveling to Mexico City to protect said music. So I was wondering, like, is there a way to make that process easier for me?
I would say, because I actually never had any personal experience with that, nor have I heard of that with any other songwriters that I know, and I know a fair amount. Traveling somewhere definitely wouldn't make any sense. Um, if I were you, I would contact copyright.gov and find out. Now, what you're talking about in regards to mailing your work to yourself, you can do that. It's called what we call a poor man's copyright. Um, and it is definitely valid. So one of the things, now I talked to the director from the Copyright Office in the Library of Congress, and Berkeley, College of Music, they had an event that was going on, and I was there, and she was there giving a presentation. And we had the conversation about like what, when is a song copywritten? And the song technically is copywritten as soon as it's conceptualized. Now we're dealing with digital audio. So of course, like, what is that, right? It's intellectual property. We can't feel it. We can't touch it. But sending your song to yourself in the mail, you can do that. I mean, it's all legal. Your computer stamp of when you actually created that song in your computer, that's also valid and legal as well. The only time that it's really a big deal to really worry about it is someone infringes on your copyright. So having the work copywritten itself, that just gives you protections in case you actually have to lean on the Copyright Office in regards to legal support. So that's one thing there. So myself as a songwriter, if you're doing those things, that's fine. If you're able to, do that, let's say if you're able to register, I'm not sure what your legal status is, but if you're able to register the songs, register the copyright, you can do them as a collection of work as well, just to throw that out there. So you don't have to feel like every song I write, I have to go and copyright it because there's a fee associated with that. I will definitely do a little research for you, and I can kind of connect back with Peter about this and let you guys know, because my gut from what I know is that you as an individual, whatever you have, kind of like as a human being would represent your work. So we have social security numbers, which kind of says who we are. And I would think that whatever you have to being registered here in the US, if you're in the US, would be sufficient enough. Now, that's not factual. That's just what I think from what I know and how that works. So calling ASCAP, definitely ASCAP Member Services is actually pretty good, where again, on their website, you can find the numbers and just give them a call and say, hey, this is my situation. And, how do I go about doing this? So, because there's so many people in the US that aren't from the US, I just haven't dealt with that personally. But I'll definitely, help you research that to figure it out.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And by the way, like if anyone wants to connect with me outside of this forum, we can always do that on social media. If you want my email or whatever it is that we can always do that as well. If there's any way I can be helpful to what you guys are doing.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So, one of the other things, just if I can ask a question, since we have a limited group here, what platforms are you guys recording on, and like what's the focus, like your personal creative focus? Could I ask those questions? Maybe we can kind of direct the conversation towards like what somebody's interests might be.
Well, I use a variety of platforms. I mostly do like when doing like music for production or anything like that, I use a DAW. Like, I have FL Studio.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I use mostly. But I think my main output is like probably scores, like written music rather than audio.
Yeah, in terms of DAW usage, zFest actually promotes using Reaper since it's a pseudo-free software. So a lot of Reaper users here. And then, like Dan said in the chat, there are some people who use Logic, some people who use Ableton, some people who use Pro Tools, but we're all kind of familiar with all of them. But Reaper is kind of the one that we focus in on whenever we do tech sessions.
Got it. I was just curious because of that, because that was something that normally I would kind of talk about, like what DAWs that are out there. If you guys, Reaper is definitely cool. I'm not that, proficient with Reaper, but it's definitely a cool program. I happen to believe that anything you're using, like FL Studio, is definitely a powerful program that's been around for a long time, right? They all have different levels of versions that you can use. You might have like a free version or a student version into a pro versions. At the end of the day, for how I like, as much as I know about software and just whether it be Pro Tools or Ableton, Studio One is really huge now. Um, they all kind of do the same thing. If you're working with film, then that's something that you have to kind of consider, like, if it's Logic. Pro Tools isn't something that, if you're a creative person, um, using instruments and even MIDI, like, just at the end of the day, like MIDIs and plugins and soft synths, Pro Tools is like super duper clunky, so it's not something that is really easy to use. If you started out on that and you use it, sure, that's fine. But for what that is, like a lot of the other software that's out there, like, FL Studio and things like that, are definitely a lot better. Even GarageBand, if you need to get ideas out, right? That comes with every Mac that's out there. I'm a firm believer of like just using tools that you have. I have way too much stuff, and to be honest with you, it's like there's so much free software out there, and I'm like a software junkie at the end of the day. And to justify it, it's like, oh, if I just do one thing with this software, I'll justify having it. But it becomes too much, clutter. I do believe you can be inspired by sounds and things like that. But if, like, I say that for people not to worry about like what they're using or how much their program costs, if it's whatever. Like Reaper, I actually did a workshop with Reaper for what's the Xbox game? GarageBand. No, what is it? GarageBand. What's the one for Xbox? Uh, um, um, the band, the one that you play along.
Guitar Hero or something?
Guitar Hero, yeah, those ones. Yeah, I did a it was just like learning brain surgery or something. But Reaper was the platform, so that's how I kind of learned to use it. But we were basically taking songs and cutting up songs and learning how to program for Guitar Hero and some of those other gaming platforms, which is pretty cool, to do. So that was my intro to Reaper. But
what did that entail? The cutting up the songs?
A lot. It was the hardest thing I ever had to learn over a weekend. It pretty much entailed like having, like, in layman terms, kind of like cue points and layers of things that potentially happen within a certain track, and letting the gaming software, kind of know, like, when one thing happens or when this certain sound happens, then this other, graphic needs to happen. And it was just a lot. It was something that we were trying to do to open up channels for other, like, bands and musicians to be able to actually do it themselves, or as studios where we can actually offer that as a service. And it was just way, way too much. And really the showstopper for me with that was a copyright issue, because a band is going to get really excited about doing it, right? So if I said, hey, I can get your song on, Guitar Hero, and if you didn't write the song, that means you come into a studio, you pay a bunch of money to get this done, because it wasn't that easy. So it would have cost a certain amount of money, but then it wouldn't have made it through the checks on the licensing side. And I think I'm one of the people that was in that workshop that brought that up and say, hey, what are you guys going to do about this? And then from there, things didn't quite work out. I think they realized that was probably like one of the number one challenges that they had with doing that. It's a great idea, to be able to do that, to just take your indie record and have somebody have the ability to download it. It's like being on Spotify and everything else right now. If you just tell your fans that my music's up there, somebody's going to go listen to it. So that was well before any of these streaming services were out there. But yeah, it was pretty challenging to do. At least I found it unnecessary. From my direction that I was going, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I feel like I'm smart enough to be here, but no, I don't think so. I don't think I want to spend my time doing that. But definitely a cool experience.
Yeah. Just to direct the conversation a little bit more, and anybody feel free to jump in with any thoughts. I feel like we can maybe transition to more like a pick Malik's brain kind of mode, if that's okay with you, Malik. I feel like you have such a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
So many questions there. But I'm curious, I know we know you from Rudy, and I'm curious if you could talk about This Ain't Normal and the production side of things, music, and how that all went together, because I know you mentioned there's a kind of a story there.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we play the trailer first or after? How did you guys do it? What do you?
Sure, like up to you. I have it queued up, so whatever you prefer.
Sure, we'll play it first, and they can get
cool.
an idea of what the film is. So
yeah, this might be familiar to some of you, but this is one of the films that Rudy was talking about that Malik wrote the music for. And so here's the trailer again.
Boston is small, very small. So you got gangs on every street.
As long as I'm good with these right here, I don't give a fuck about nobody. Gotta check the bushes, you know what I'm saying? Gotta make sure ain't no new fucking cars on the block, all that, man, you know what I'm saying? We definitely on point. Gotta be cautious, man, where I come from, man. If not, I'll be on Channel 7 News, man.
We lost our first friend at 15. He died at 15. 2004, lost another one. 2005, lost another one. 2006, lost two more.
What I do isn't a job. I have to make sure this kid doesn't get killed.
I didn't have nobody that could tell me, Al, selling drugs is bad, stealing is bad, being in the gang is bad.
I feel like his life is like a repeat of my life.
It's not normal for a young man to be shot. Like, that's not normal.
These young men really need to see, that positive image of who they really could be.
We have to teach the young brothers and sisters in our community what it means to live.
Okay, we're back.
We're back.
It's like every time I see that trailer, believe it or not, like I have flashbacks of like the process. So the thing that I wanted to kind of share with this film, it pretty much is about a lot of the gang culture in Boston. And our goal was to just humanize these individual circumstances, right? And the people that actually are involved, the people that, sometimes are subject to, whatever gang activities is going on. But we wanted these individuals to tell their story versus, hearing it from the police or some other, official that's out there. That's really just going to tell, one side of the narrative. And for myself, growing up in the city, I know a lot of this is the environment that I grew up in, right? Which a lot of people might not know that. So that's why I'm always, open to share. Because, and this is why I kind of talk a lot about what I do education-wise, just to kind of open up, just like my history, my path, and, of where I came from. And I also know that a lot of people that grow up in these conditions are really, really good people. And sometimes they're just misguided or, even just, jaded to an extent, or just don't have the support network. I had, my high school principal, that pulled me aside when I was doing crazy stuff in high school, and then, the reality of a lot of my friends not being here anymore, because that's just my reality. And I think of somebody like, oh, yeah, they died. So working on this film, was really something that I thought, okay, let's tell this story. Let's make the music diverse. By talking to, the editor. Actually, I didn't meet the editor until like really after the post, like after the movie was done. But when I spoke to him. He's in New York, and he's like, hey, send me some music for this film. Like, I kind of knew what it was about. I knew where it was going to be shot. I didn't really see any of the footage to really know what the story was like. So I ended up sending him, just like a folder full of stuff. Like, here, man, check this out. Go ahead, temp the film. If you guys know what temping a film is when you just kind of take music that you think might work for certain scenes, even if you're not really sure. There's something just for the editor to kind of create, his flow from. It could be original music. It could be temped with music that's out there, like other, major music. A lot of companies do that when they can't afford to license a piece of music. They'll just go ahead and temp it, and again, just kind of get us to kind of rip it off and duplicate whatever that feel and tempo and everything else is of it. So I gave him a bunch of music and didn't hear back from him like right away. And I was like, I wonder what's going on. So after I finally talked to him, he was like, none of this music is going to work at all. Like, almost none, like maybe one track out of like 30 or something, 30 or 40 tracks. And I was like, oh shoot, like I have no idea. So I was like, all right, dude, send me some footage. Let me check it out. And when I saw the footage, I cannot express like the level of depression that I had just because of watching the film, right? And of course, there's a lot that didn't make it, that's still on the, the floor, the cutting room floor. But as he was sending me scenes that he was piecing together, like editing together, I literally was like, I've never felt like so emotionally like drained from watching something. And I think part of it is just the condition of what these individuals have to go through, like young kids, some of the kids that are, 4 or 5 years old, things that they're saying. And so I had to kind of figure out, well, what does that, translate to musically? So in the film, it's still like there's some success stories and some things that happen. It's definitely like, a roller coaster with certain people that are involved. I'm not sure what Rudy shared with even post where some of these individuals in the film aren't here anymore because of that's the environment, things that have happened. But that in itself, like I found myself like watching, and everything I thought I would write for this film, I didn't write that. It's like some of it was just scored to picture as we went along. Other of it, there's songs in there. So, I tried to like, pull other people, like different creative people in regards to like, rappers and singers and things like that, to kind of shape what this whole, soundtrack or score is going to be like. But it was emotionally draining, which I've never ever dealt with that on that level before. Anyways, I thought like, so, to share like the process of that was interesting because a lot of times we think of music and we think like, oh, we're just going to go ahead and do this warm and fuzzy thing, or we're going to write this ballad, or, even when you write a sad song, it's like you're really not living that sad song. A lot of times you're just imagining that sad song and you're writing it. Like you could be in a sad place at the time, but, afterwards, like even me watching the trailer, like it's just kind of like, oh, wow, like that's crazy, because I'm kind of seeing like we're kind of deeper into the process. But that was something there that, again, Rudy and I, we have a good working relationship. Part of it is me like creating something, giving it to the editor, figuring out if the editor is, if it works with his direction. Of course, they're still cutting and doing a lot of different things. Ultimately, the director would see it and then basically kind of dictate if something works or not works. But I hope you guys get a chance to check out the film. Anyways, it's out. I don't know I think Rudy probably shared, but we just did a deal with Showtime, so it's actually going to be out next month, in August. So it's going to be on Showtime. But right now, it's on different streaming platforms. I know it's on iTunes and iTunes and Vudu and DirecTV. I'm not sure if it's still on Verizon. But we did, streaming deals. So it's actually out there if you guys are interested in seeing it now, but it's going to be on Showtime if you have Showtime next month. Some of the other links that I sent you, Peter, if you wanted to, like this, let me see what's there. Well, if you want to check out the vaccine commercial, that's something that we did for Mass General Hospital. But this was where the director actually he kind of temped the film with something that he thought worked, and then it came to me, and I had to kind of write the music and kind of like, kind of bring his idea to life. And that's just like pretty short one.
There are words that strike deep within our hearts and minds. In the past year, the word COVID became a daily presence in our lives. We're consumed with talks about it. In these conversations, two other words come up: concern and trust. There are those who choose to use misleading information to play into long-standing concerns we may have regarding medical treatment. In the midst of this cloud of uncertainty lies another word: truth. There are certain truths that connect us all. We all want our loved ones to stop suffering. We all want to keep a roof over our heads. We all want to return to normal. Now we have a path to that truth. The vaccine offers a solution. Think about it.
Okay, I feel better about watching that one, even though it's COVID. But that one there is, again, it's your typical, commercial that you would see about a brand. Again, musically, just being to kind of tell that story. It was pretty much like had to be scored to picture based off of, the cuts and everything else. I don't know, Peter, if you want to run like the other. So an interesting one that I did is Lift Me Up, which is, we did this a while ago, but to give you an idea, and this is actually a music video, so we don't have to play the whole thing. I don't know if you want to play however long you think is appropriate, but all of the video was shot, and all of the audio that I used for the vocals was shot live with the video. So I didn't do any pre-recording like you would do like a music video, how you'd write the song in the studio and then go in and lip sync. So all of the vocals and all the instruments and everything is all live in. And so myself and the editor, I did this with a company called Small Army, and they're an agency, here in Boston, but everything, it was like kind of crazy when I think about it, because even when we're in the studio with some scenes in there that was shot, and then we shot remotely. So we were outdoors with my battery powered everything. And we're pulling people in off the street from Eggleston Station, like if you know the Eggleston area in Boston, Columbus Ave. So, and again, like doing releases as people came up and say, hey, you want to be a part of this? The lead singer was a girl that I met, her and her mom, at a workshop that I was doing. And she was someone that, she was only 14 years old. And I told her mom, like, hey, we'll catch up after. And then I was working on this project, so I wasn't able to really connect with them. And like 2 days before I was shooting this, I called them to say, hey, I just have to finish this production and get back. And then I thought about it. I was like, wow, she would actually be kind of cool in this project. So I was able to, get her to come in and do the lead vocal and everything else. But all of the leads and everything else was all done live, which is different from how normally it's done. But anyways, you can check it out. But this is
40 years ago, the clouds rolled in, the rain came down on the edge of town.
They said we're gonna build a highway, you're gonna have to move. We said, Lord, this is a home, you got to go another way. Well, the town stood up passing on to other souls who can't wait. On the urban edge of town, we tend the gardens at our feet. We plant the seeds of tomorrow. We look after you and me. When you have choices, you are free to have a home. It's to have peace, to love your neighbor. It's to be complete, and to be complete, you have to believe. In each other, believe that we are one. So let's be up, so I can see tomorrow, and we're standing together when the day is done. In each other.
I almost wanted to let that run for the entire time.
Oh.
It was so close to the end.
Well, again, if you guys, you have the links now, so you can check it out again. But so yeah, that was an interesting project because as you see, seeing like the cuts and everything else, all the vocals were done on live during those takes. So trying to figure out what vocal takes were good and what visual takes were good was definitely something that thankfully kind of came together, because we know that might not happen all the time when it comes down to singing live, outside. But again, as you can see, like a lot of random people, it's like super random. We were trying to get people, but Urban Edge is a housing organization that's been here for a very long time. Well, at least 40 years. That was a 40-year anniversary. But I guess Route 95 they were trying to cut through where those actually housing projects are, and they had to protest and petition for that not to happen, and everything else. So that's something that we did there. The other thing that I thought, are you familiar with Bodega Makeover Project at all? So Bodega Makeover Project is a reality TV show that we're working on now. This is just a pilot phase. So what we're doing is going into, I should say, the producer, her name is Evelyn Brito, and she's finding bodegas. This one is on Dudley Street in Roxbury, and they're going in and making over the bodega like you would on any HD TV show, like flipping homes. And this one is flipping bodegas, but also what they're doing is going in and flipping the foods that are offered. She has sponsors from like Eversource and different health organizations that are actually sponsoring. So the whole healthy food and healthy living aspect of it is what we're trying to promote as well, promoting awareness of that and getting those appropriate sponsors to actually come support it. Eversource is going in and changing all the lighting and refrigeration. So that's another thing that's actually, pretty cool as well about it. But we did the whole ribbon cutting with the mayor, and it was actually pretty cool. This is actually the full episode if you guys want to check it out, if you want to share it with folks. But if you want to just kind of see what it looks like, you can just do maybe a couple minutes.
Yo, what up? Welcome to Bodega Makeover. I'm your host, Jerry Diaz, and we're on a mission to connect community and family through access to healthy food options. And we're going city to city looking for bodegas in need of a serious makeover. And our first stop is Roxbury, Massachusetts, a community in Boston that was once home to a young Malcolm X and also to the Vega family who are getting their long-awaited makeover. Let's go check them out. 2020 started a worldwide change from COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, and some businesses had to say goodbye forever. Communities are starting to wake up and demanding justice. And in every crisis emerges many leaders. And we want to spotlight a Roxbury leader, Thaddeus Miles.
So HoodFit is an organization that I founded several years ago to really address the financial wealth, the physical wealth, the spiritual wealth, and the health wealth of individuals. We started 7 years ago, we started our first 5K in Roxbury to address the mental and physical health of individuals. And we started with 126 people, and now we're up to over 1,000 people. We partner with the Demick Health Center and the Boston Athletic Association, who runs the Boston Marathon. We also partner with Tufts Medical, and so they have a health pavilion. And so it's really starting to think about the community in a holistic way. Just here in this community here, the average life expectancy is 58 years of age. You go down past 2 blocks down, take a left, go half a mile down, and the life expectancy is 91. Wow. So you got a 33-year life expectancy difference within a 1.5 mile radius of folks. And so those are the challenges that HoodFit is trying to address with the many partners, especially like with what's happening here today, that's going to make a tremendous difference in this community for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
So that's the full pilot that's there if you guys want to check that out. But I'm the composer and music supervisor, for this project as well. And there's a few others in the pipeline right now that we'll be working on as well. But that was, again, kind of reality TV style. Them shooting a lot of the footage, getting the whole project together, and it's mostly us in post. One thing I meant to mention before is, I don't know if you guys know what ADR is, but it's automated dialogue replacement. So in the beginning of that show, when it first comes on, when he's on the roof saying, hey, a lot of that wasn't filmed or that audio wasn't caught. So I recorded that audio after the fact and there's different portions of this particular project, just like almost every other movie that's out there, where they have to go in, they might have an actor come in. In this case, Jerry was from New York, right? So he comes in to film the Bodega project with, again, on scene, whatever sets that they're doing, locations, I should say, that they're at. They go back, they listen to the footage, and it's like, oh man, this footage isn't great. The audio is not that great. So then we had to go in, and somebody has to literally, because there's a certain script that he's following, but a lot of this stuff is just kind of like ad-libbed as you go along, him being like the host. And so they pretty much had to kind of come back in with the script of what he was saying. Sometimes it's even like what he thought he was saying, and then record it. So in my studio, in my booth, at least I have a monitor there where in this case, an actor can kind of see what they're doing on screen, right? So I can actually, within my DAW, pop up the video. They can actually see where they are, their body movements, how they're kind of getting into this conversation, and we can go in and re-record that audio, for the dialogue, I should say. And so, again, by watching it, you wouldn't know. I know, of course, just because of dealing with it, but you're dealing with environment, you're dealing with mic placement, potentially, depending on however they recorded it originally. Whether or not that was, like a boom mic or a lav mic, something like that. So my job in the studio as an engineer, like as a recording engineer, is also to capture that audio, edit the timing, because sometimes things have to be slid back and forth with our digital technology that we have. Also sonically being able to match up that audio with the original audio that was there. Because a lot of times you're not re-recording the whole thing. In this case, we ended up recording probably like 3/4 of that, and then it ended up being a lot of the original audio. And there was another piece in the film where he was talking, but he was actually in a stairwell at Mass General, and of course that audio was echoey and everything else, and so we had to kind of go in post and kind of redo that audio, and then there's other audio that it's outside environmentally where he's talking to a doctor, like on the outside of Mass General, where they have like a, little outdoor balcony type of thing, or where they're sitting in the chair and talking, but again, you have trees, you have the wind, you have all these different things that are going on. So we had to go in and kind of replace a lot of that sound, right? So when we replace the audio, it's like, well, we got to replace the environment as well. So that's another area of posts that I find like really interesting to do. So just to kind of share that. And the other video, I don't know how much time we have, but there's the video there, the bass, which I'm the narrative advisor for this. I was a composer. I was originally hired as a composer, and then they were looking for a narrative advisor. And it was kind of interesting because I had to interview like the president of UMass, which was like kind of one style interview, let's say, one environment, corporate, and then I had to interview some of the student athletes. But it was really kind of fun just to kind of meet people on that level, like on the production side, to meet folks. And then we ended up doing, the music. I should say I ended up writing the music for this. But this is just another campaign spot.
Growing up was kind of really hard because it's like you have two paths to follow. I was kind of leaning towards taking the wrong path and everything. And then there was one day when I went to the base and I saw the girls that were older and they were kicking ass. And since then it was like, I need to pick this path.
I was born and raised in Boston. I'm from Hyde Park. You go 2 miles down, you're in Back Bay. It's a whole different tax bracket. But because of the color of my skin and where I live, a lot of the times there's a whole other world that we don't get exposed to. But because I had these people pushing me and telling me I could do it, then I unlocked a whole different world.
Everyone in our society has, I think, a responsibility to develop that talent that is really distributed everywhere in our communities. With the base, you see that these students believe. They believe that they can succeed. Every day they wake up, they're determined to prove themselves, and they have the ability to do anything, literally anything.
We're taking our kids into boardrooms. We're taking our kids into the financial sector. We're taking our kids to the museum. We're taking them everywhere.
We just want access. That's all we want. We just want an opportunity. Once I got that opportunity, man, it just started rain falling.
That earn your spot mentality. That's what they're infusing now to all these generations that are coming through our doors right now. Nothing in life is given. Everything has to be earned. And that's how they played it on the field.
Yeah, so that was an interesting project to work on. That's with a film production company called Windy Films out in East Boston. But yeah, just to kind of share those, I kind of picked those examples anyways, just because they were a bit different. The process is different. How they kind of start and ultimately get finished is different from a music supervision standpoint. Trying to figure out like what music will work for them. Bodega Makeover is definitely like a longer film production, like in regards to a reality TV show, where there's definitely a lot of different styles of music in there, whether it be, again, fast, slow, emotional, cultural music, things like that, to kind of really tell the story a little bit more. And I try to be like really as diverse as possible. As a songwriter, I try to be as diverse as possible. In some requests for different projects, a lot of times somebody might send over like a creative brief, and that brief might say, hey, this client likes this certain style of music. Other times it could be like, hey, we're going to hire you as a composer. Like, what would you do for this? And then sometimes it could be on point, and other times it's like, not quite. And then you kind of go back to the drawing board. But that process to me is pretty fun, at least to do that and get into more of a creative working relationship, with the client. That's almost like, what does zFest sound like? I don't know if we have an answer to that question yet. But you guys kind of sound like it would be a little bit more exciting, than some of these examples that I have. At least down the bodega lane of is there a question in there? Did something pop up? But yeah, so for myself, like I really enjoy doing this type of work and working with folks. I really enjoy working with people. I enjoy working with talent. I'm a vocal producer as well, so working with singers in a lot of cases, and just kind of across the board. I really enjoy collaborating as well, because I feel like when I'm collaborating on a project, I just have no idea what it would turn out like, and some songwriters can really be like focused on what they want and how they think it should come out. I think if we start with certain parameters and guidelines of what we're setting out to do, and then just go ahead and just let it be. So I think that's the beauty of our creativity, to be able to work with people that way. And ultimately, be able to kind of really share, even culturally, like kind of share where people comes from. I think that's the whole thing with diversity as well, is like we all come from different places and we all have different perspectives on things. So to be able to kind of like, from a creative standpoint, whether it be visual or audio, we all kind of sound differently, like we think differently. It's, for myself, it's like really interesting to try to figure out how sound works to tell stories, and even, how silence works as well. Like sometimes it's not necessary, and I don't think we really touched on, like sound design and any areas that way. Well, I kind of did with Bodega Makeover, because sound design would be a lot of times if you look at Foley, which is me replacing the sound with something to tell that story, which is, the wind or trees and that kind of thing. A lot of times it could be helpful to tell a story, like if you're in a restaurant somewhere and then you hear glasses tinkling and, and chatter coming out of one side, one speaker here or there, a surround, and a lot of that in a movie setting isn't real. So a lot of times we're tasked to kind of create that environment in that space. I worked on this other film that it's called From Zero to I Love You, and it's actually pretty cool. It's an LBGT film, and that was my first time kind of working with a director over in LA. And the cool thing I'd have to say is the story, because I actually, to this day, I haven't met the director, but I knew the editor, my friend Christo, and he thought I'd be a good match to work on the film. And the only reason why I even say that it's an LBGT film is because people look at certain genres of films, like a martial arts film, or the players in a film, and think like it's going to be a certain type of story. And for me, because my friends are everyone, I like to, promote that. But when we're working together, none of that really matters. The cool thing to me is it kind of really drove home how we're all like the same human being individuals, right? So, in other words, the story told a story that I could really relate to, and that I could kind of relate to my friends. And what's just like, I don't want to give away the story because it's actually like a really cool story. But you can really get into it. So whenever I work on a project, it's normally just from a technical standpoint, right? I might be listening to dialogue, but I'm not really paying attention to the story. But I was hired as a composer, but I ended up being hired as a mix engineer to actually work on all the audio posts. But I should have put that on this list because it's actually a really cool story that I share with a lot of my friends, because it's one of the more different projects that I had to work on from a technical aspect of it, and a story aspect of it, where it's like, oh, this is a really cool story. So I started, really getting into it. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Like if I work on a movie, like This Ain't Normal is different because I grew up here in Boston, and I'm like, oh wow, this is like, kind of worse than I even thought. Like I kind of grew up in this stuff, and I think because as in my adult years, I kind of moved away from it. But again, like whether it be This Ain't Normal or From Zero to I Love You or any other, movie or Scary Movie. I don't know if you guys can know with my Scary Movie poster, Scary Movie 3 back there, and we worked on that. All of these films just kind of have a different approach, I think, musically to work on. I wasn't as involved in the movie aspect of Scary Movie as I was in post with soundtrack and all that. We worked on music for the film. For Scary Movie, they were like, hey, we need a 50 Cent rapper, because they're over in LA shooting and they wanted an East Coast rapper, right? So I get a call. My buddy Jorge Carante calls me up, and he was like, hey man, is this rapper or that rapper around? And so we end up doing all the recording of it. Kind of different process, where we're just writing songs, recording songs and sending them over, and then they're actually dealing with that whole editing aspect of it from the film standpoint, versus like This Ain't Normal or From Zero to I Love You, and even Push Madison versus Madison, which is the other film I did with Creative Buzz and Rudy Hippolyte, which I was way more ingrained in those films, like way more involved in it. And it's just kind of interesting, like how emotionally that kind of comes out, and then the technical aspect of trying to get something, that's a completed project, and feeling, I guess I'm more attached to it. So I feel a lot better about the films in the first place versus just kind of like throwing a piece of music at it,
Do you feel like there's a big difference in the, like, I don't know, I guess like the connection of music to the film if you're more involved? Like, does it feel like it matches up better or something like that if you're more involved?
Yeah, time is always an issue of when a lot of this stuff gets done, right? So, and a lot of times a director or a producer might say, and it's a lot of times it's a producer says, hey, give me something that works for this, right? Even advertising, it's like that sometimes, right? So with all the commercials you see out there, not all of them are being like scored to picture. Not all of them have time to like sit down and have a brief about what the client wants. A lot of times it's like, hey, give me something that works. They'll pick it. So for myself doing music licensing in my company, Real Sync Music, I actually had to create that company just so I can actually service those type of projects, because a lot of times those don't have like huge budgets to them, could be, decent, but not anything that myself, like I want to work on in regards to like staying up overnight to do it. I'd much rather have the time to kind of engage with a producer or even a director, and even sometimes go down if it's like a shoot somewhere that I could even go there and visit sometimes, because I just get a different perspective of what's going on, and I can kind of take in things a little bit differently. When you're working on the clock, you don't really get the chance to kind of go back and really absorb what goes on. That bass spot that I just played just now, like that was something where I ended up talking to the director, and it's like, hey, we want something kind of like this. So I ended up writing a few things originally that I thought was like down that lane, but just different enough. And then after the fact, the director kind of like was like, oh, I kind of like this. They're like, whatever they liked in the first place is what they really liked. So all I really had to do is like just create something of that same vein, you know, versus thinking that I'm going to do this like amazing. It's still my production. It's still done my way. It's still my emotion that's in it. You know, even when I did that project and, you know, he called me and was like, oh, that sound is really cool. Like, it's kind of like this synthy thing going on back there. So when I'm creating, I'm normally creating in layers emotionally to try to figure out, again, how do I tell that story and highlight different aspects of it. Sometimes it's a character, so this ain't normal. There's certain characters that are in telling that story, and there's one piece of music that's a little bit of a theme that happens throughout the film. When, you know, there's a song called "Tired," and one of the moms that's in that trailer, I should say the mom that's in the trailer, the black woman that's there, she has 3 kids. You know, her son's the one that was, you know, in the hospital, you know, in the trailer. And when I was watching it, first thing in my mind is like, she's tired, you know, like almost physically looking at her. It's like, she's tired. So that's kind of where that song came from, you know, and it's more like it's a bit of a slower, you know, kind of ballad type of song that kind of follows her with different, you know, themes. And again, emotionally, there's a lot of other things that are going on in the film that the music is changing as the stories are being told. So, but yeah, to answer your question.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What was that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes or so left. If anyone has any questions, this is the time. Or not?
No, it's great to be on here with you guys. And again, if anyone has any questions, a follow up, or want to connect, you know, that's totally fine. I'm definitely going to research the copyright thing because that's actually something that I haven't explored at all. You know, especially in this country with all the songwriters that I know, and I know a lot of people that aren't from here as well. So I'm hoping that the solution is a lot simpler for Dion. That's his name. How do you say the whole thing?
Dionisio, or Dio for short.
Oh, Dio. Okay, Dio.
Yeah.
Dionisio.
But yeah, unless there's any other questions, I think we can take this down off YouTube. So thank you so much for being here, Malik. And yeah, always a pleasure to hear about your work and to hear some of your music and some of the projects you've been working on. I learned a lot. So yeah, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.